it's just that the words that you were saying before, I could interpret that way. But no, you made it very clear.
Well, and let me then add about the relationship of faith and works. Luther said, faith alone saves, but that faith is never alone. Faith alone saves, but it's never alone. Faith always produces good works. Some which only God can see their actual standing before Him, whether they are done in true faith or whether they're done out of selfishness. And they're always, by the way, tainted by sin.
No, but your point being that just because we don't see a Christian doing good works does not mean that we get to say he ain't a Christian.
Right. Let me just add one more thing. Luther was stunningly and perhaps offensively objective about who's a Christian. He didn't base it on them, he based it on Christ. So he would say, had they had Christ delivered to them? Has Christ been preached into them, fed into them by His body, blood, and Lord's Supper? Have they been baptized into Christ? Then they're a Christian. Then he could also in the same breath say, and if they live like heathen, they must have rejected all of that's happened. I mean, but he was very objective. He didn't, in other words, he to look for who's a Christian, he looked for Christ. And are they present in their life? And then, as Christians who still retain that impactful fall of Adam and Eve, still retain sin, which is being cleansed from us in this life, there's this process of sanctification that'll all be wiped away in the place where there's no more tears or death or crying. But as that's being worked away, sin still inheres to us, and we sin daily and much. Luther would then exhort us to turn from that sin, but not to turn from it in such a way that, again, we have to rely on ourselves to turn from it, but to turn from that sin by turning to God. Because it's only in forgiveness that we are given freedom from sin and freedom and strength for new life and to turn away from sin to good works and holy living and love.
I'm a very simple person, and I think you can make it very simple by saying God made us with freedom and freedom to make choices. This choice is mine. I can do the good or I can do the evil.
Well, now I'm going to complicate it for you. Luther said after the fall, freedom of the will is fiction, and everything the will does is sin. He called it the bondage of the will, a bound choice. He said after the fall, man is conceived and born in sin, as David says in Psalm 51, and we are rebellious creatures against God, and we run away from Him. And let me give you a quote on that. And that could be
his dispute with Erasmus was over that question.
Exactly. And Luther said the bondage of the will on this topic in the Small Catechism are his only two books that he thought were worth keeping. I disagree. I think there's other books worth keeping. He said that debate with Erasmus in 1524, 1525, they had an exchange of works on this. But let me give you a quote that I think really summarizes well what Luther would say on that. Here it is. He said, I think this is very descriptive. The human will is like a beast between God and Satan. If God sits on it, it wills and goes where God wills it to go. If Satan sits on it, it wills and goes where Satan wills. Nor does it have the power to choose which rider it will go to or seek, but the riders struggle over which of them will have it or rule it. Not even the most faithful people had any choice in the matter. Even so, the outcome of this cosmic struggle is never in doubt. In Christ, God had won the victory, and He rides us. So, Luther would say after the fall, the freedom of the will you have is whether to have one or two servings of pasta. Whether you want to walk home or take a bus home. But in spiritual matters, he said God is divine, sovereign, and works completely as the sole actor. And what that does is, maybe I complicate things for you, but hopefully it's also comfort to you, because if any of us have to rely a little bit on our choice, let me tell you, all of us as sinners will all screw up. Well, if salvation is up to me, 1%, I'll be the first one to mess up. But if it's 100% on God and on Christ, then it's sure and certain. And then we have comfort for trouble comes.